Hello, this is Brian. Today is a gloriously bright and beautiful January 17th, 2021. I am in the Santa Ana Mountains, Cleveland National Forest, over between Blue Jay and Falcon Group Campgrounds, closer to Falcon Group Campground, which is just over there. So, probably, if you've seen a nice chunk of my videos, you realize that I do a lot of videos in this area because I find it so appealing and beautiful and fun. Well, here I am again. So we had a few Coulter Pines that look like fizzled out over here. Most of the Coulter Pines here are doing pretty well, gotta say. Most of these trees are doing pretty well, which is good. But with the Santa Ana winds that are kicking in and out periodically, I'm trying not to stand under them too much because their heavy cones will wreck shop. Now, what I'm actually looking at right now, a couple incense cedars. Yep, here they are, Calocedrus decurrens. They do plant them around the area, and for the most part they do fairly well. I've seen them in a few spots here in the Santa Anas, and they have the propensity to naturalize. And they are incense cedars. Always been fascinated with these trees, and apparently they reproduce pretty well because there are still cones on the trees. These little woody things here with the little bracts, those are the cones of your Calocedrus decurrens. Now, this tree may not be native in this mountain range per se, the Santa Ana Mountains. They are most definitely a Southern California native. And where we are is Orange County right now. Orange County, but really close to the Riverside County line. Orange County, they're not truly native. But Riverside County, which is the next one over, they're found in the San Jacinto Mountains. And then, of course, Palomar in San Diego. A lot of the mountains in San Diego County. And they're found all the way up from Baja California to Oregon. And they seem to do pretty well here in the Santa Ana Mountains. They're not quite as vigorous, say, as you would find them in, say, the San Gabriel Mountains, or especially in the San Bernardino Mountains, where they get enormous. Or the Sierra Nevadas, where they really get big. They get close to 200 feet there. But here in the Santa Anas, they're a little slower growing, but they're still a vigorous tree. That's just their nature. They're not extremely fast growing trees, but they do pretty well, and they're pretty well adapted to the heat, because they can get pretty hot down here. We're at 3,350 feet above sea level. Yeah, the mark of the Cypress Family right there, Cupressaceae. Incense cedar with its flattened sprays of foliage. And, like I said, they're reproducing. Look at the insane amount of saplings under here. These are all saplings that came from these trees. They do reproduce here in the Santa Ana Mountains. I don't know if any persisted, but if you go up Main Divide, where it turns to dirt, and start going up Main Divide all the way to Los Pinos Saddle, which is probably about a mile and a half up, mile and a half hike up. Los Pinos Saddle, the area burned in the 2018 Holy Fire, but so I don't know, how that area's fared out, but there were a few incense cedars over there, actually several of them, and they were reproducing. Not as much as this. This is insane. This is crazy. This is kind of how they reproduce in the cooler, moister areas. They reproduce like gangbusters. But here, this one's really really reproducing like crazy. Yeah, you'll find, you know, some places where it's, especially where it's moister and higher up, you'll see carpets and carpets of incense cedar seedlings and thickets of saplings everywhere. So this is not uncommon. But the one I was talking about, the grove up on Los Pinos Saddle, which is also just barely in Orange County, that area, you know, there were some incense cedar seedlings. I didn't see as many. Not like this. There were a couple of them in the soil, but some of those trees are starting to get up closer to like to 40 feet tall. They're still really very young, and obviously planted by the Forest Service for reforestation purposes. I don't know if they're gonna start coming back, because that area did burn in the holy fire. I'm hoping they do. I'm really hoping they do, because they were doing very well there and they were getting very lush. So this is a part of Blue Jay Campground I really haven't explored. Blue Jay and Falcon Group Camp. I haven't been to this side, and there are many more Coulter Pines here than I even realized. There are gangs of Coulter Pines here too. And we even got Monterey Pines too on the other side there by Falcon Group Camp. But there are many more Coulter Pines than I thought, because the whole grove of them just keeps going and going. And Coulter Pines, they are native to the Santa Ana Mountains. These ones here, the ones here I believe were planted by the Forest Service, and they just did exceptionally well. And they've reproduced, so they're maintaining and even expanding their population. If you go towards that way, there are a lot of young trees over there that were, I could say with about 98% surety that they germinated on their own. This area is actually pretty rich with conifers. You got Coulter Pines, of course, and we got these Monterey Pines. Pinus radiata, variety radiata. It just smells so good over here. These ones I'm not as worried about standing under when it gets windy. Here's a Monterey pine cone right here. Sometimes, every once in a while, you'll see them fall from the trees. So, the interesting thing about the Monterey pines, they do have a close relative that is native to the Santa Ana Mountains, called the knobcomb pine, Pinus attenuata. They're very closely related and can hybridize. They hybridize them in artificial settings, and they hybridize in nature where they overlap. And they do overlap in Central California occasionally. See here, they're not native here to Orange County, but they are a California native tree. And these Monterey pines have done very well. Very impressive. Every now and then I've known to second guess myself, wondering if these are actually knobcomb pines. They are very similar. Every now and then. But it's their growth habit. Their growth habit is just, it's less upright. What I mean by less upright is their branches don't go shooting straight up. I mean, they are very similar. But it's beautiful. We got some beautiful, beautiful Monterey pines here. They just don't have the same branching structure as knobcomb pines. Knobcomb pines tend to have way more upright. It's way more of an upright branching structure. That's why I'm convinced that these are beautiful Monterey pines. It's actually one of the rarer species of pines in the wild. Only a couple little spots in Central California where these grow natively. But as a species, you don't have to worry about them going extinct, because these trees are extremely heavily planted around the world. Even in the southern hemisphere, these trees are planted like gangbusters for their timber, I guess, for pulp, for timber and stuff. Bark's pretty similar. Well, like I said, the branching structure tends to be a little bit different on Pinus attenuata. Pinus attenuata, which I've still yet to spotlight. I've yet to spotlight Pinus attenuata. This would be a great place to spotlight Monterey Pines, because these are some excellent specimens. There are knobcomb pines in the area. By Blue Jay Campground, there are knobcomb pines there. Well, these Monterey pines, they don't really have the real excessively knobby cones. Maybe I should go take a walk up there and compare them. See, that's a Monterey pine cone right there. See, these ones do kind of have the knobbiness. What's just the growth on them? That's just not very akin to the beautiful knobcomb pine. The knobcomb pines tend to be much more upright. In fact, I'm going to go over to where the knobcomb pines are so I can take a look at them. Cones are very similar. Well, as I'm thinking about this here, I wonder if these could be hybrids between Pinus radiata and Pinus attenuata. Their cones do have that claw in there. See, one thing, sometimes botany is not so cut and dry. You're trying to discern different species of plants. And I'm usually pretty good about being confident in what trees I'm looking at. One thing's for certain, these are some gorgeous trees. And this looks like I think this is a Monterey, this is a sapling right here. This is not a Coulter Pine sapling. Interesting. Alright, let's go take a walk over to where I know for sure there are knobcomb pines. Yeah, their growth habits definitely different than that. Much more upright. So I'm gonna keep going over towards Blue Jay Campground. Then I'm gonna take a look, and in part 2 I'm going to show you which ones I know for a fact are knobcomb pines. Sorry, it sounds so wishy-washy. But you know, those trees have always made me scratch my head. Every time I come here, I feel confident they're Monterey pines. And then I start talking about them as if they're Monterey pines. But then sometimes I get that feeling in the back of my head that maybe they're not. So I'll see you in part 2 at a spot where I know for a fact that I'm looking at Pinus attenuata, the knobcomb pine, and I'll take a look at those and compare them, because some of those should have cones on them as well. So I'll see you in part 2, and thanks for watching thus far. See what we find out.